Is Disney about ready to be taken over? Well, we're going to talk about that and more on today's episode of the Geek Watch Podcast.
This is the Geek Watch Podcast with Brian Hatcher and Mandy Petrie.
Greetings, Geek Watchers, and welcome to episode 214 of the Geek Watch Podcast. I'm Brian Hatcher, and with me, as always, Geek Watch's own resident geek goddess, Mandy Petrie.
Hello, Brian.
And as it happens very often, after we get done recording, which we last Thursday, a bunch of stuff wound up dropping. We got a couple of trailers. We got the Penguin trailer.
Yeah.
And what did you think about that? That looks...
That was the perfect teaser. It gave us exactly what we needed to make us want to see this show, and I really want to see this show without giving away too much. We see little glimpses of people that might be someone or may not be, but it's very cool, and the narration is just perfect and just enough to give us what we need, and I'm really excited about it.
It's certainly, at least to my mind, you could tell that it took a page from the Netflix series Daredevil, especially the Kingpin. I'm sure they saw that and was like, "Wait, yeah, we definitely want to do that." So we got that. And yeah, I'm interested in seeing it. And it'll be interesting to see how they wind up developing it, because in a real sense, it is considered what they would call an Elseworlds, because it's not part of what I guess is going to be the new DCU continuity.
Right.
So, you know, we have that, and then we have, of course, Joker 2 coming out, and so you have those different worlds. And, of course, with the fact that the second Batman movie's being delayed for, I think, 2 years, at least gives you a chance to get a taste of what's going on.
Right.
So that's going to be nice. The other trailer that dropped literally minutes as you were leaving, we got a Doctor Who season 1 trailer. And I posted it on our Facebook page and made the reference, of course, that obviously they are marketing this directly to you.
Yes.
Because they use David Bowie's Changes
Yeah.
as the background. So what did you think?
Oh, of course, I'm excited to see this. One thing I was concerned about is the Doctor not having a look. One specific costume that everyone can cosplay, like the brown suit or the fez or the Converse sneakers. But after watching it, I'm okay with it. It looks like we're going to get some really cool historicals this year. And she even says Holy Bridgerton. And I can see that because that's popular right now, which Doctor Who has always come into what is in pop culture. So getting excited about that. But the sci-fi also looks good. The futuristic time travels look really cool. Of course, I'm excited about it.
Oh, yeah. And looking at the trailer, you can see there's a couple of things that they're hinting to. And I do have to say, though, the one thing that makes my blood run a little cold was when the Doctor is promising, I'm not going to let anything happen to you.
Yeah.
And of course, we know at this point, because they put it in the news, we're only going to have one season
episodes with her.
With Millie Gibson. This is going to be it. They're going to have to come up with some reason, and I'm hoping it's not a tragic one, because that's happened in the past. We've had tragic endings for the companions. We've had a lot more of them in New Who than we've had in the old ones, although,
Right.
of course, when I was...
just got dropped off.
Yeah, I will tell you this, and this was in the old version of Who, when we had Peter Davison, the Fifth Doctor, and Adric died, and nobody expected that, because, of course, we didn't even have the internet, so we didn't know it was coming. And especially because they were running the credits at the end differently than they did before. It was like silent, no music, and it was that crumbled gold star that Adric wore. And that was the way they ended it. And it's like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
It was very rough, because at that time, it wasn't something you were used to. And you're like, wow. At that point, in a sense, Doctor Who changed a little bit, because the stakes went way up at that point.
It was like in Next Gen. It was such a big deal when Tasha Yar got killed. Someone who was not a red shirt didn't get killed in a Star Trek episode, and everything changed at that point. So that was a definite pivot.
Yeah, at that point you realized anything was possible. And sometimes you have to do that. Every once in a while you have to shake things up a little bit. And so that was certainly a thing. Now, I haven't had a chance to see Dune 2 yet.
Me either.
But I have seen the new Ghostbusters.
Oh, how was it?
I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail
Okay.
because I feel like you should go in with a clean slate. I will definitely say it is true to form for what we saw with Afterlife. But I am going to say this. Reviews have gone either way. There are people who really like the movie and there are people who really hate it. And that really depends upon how you feel about the third act of this movie. If you like the third act of the movie, you will like this movie. If you don't like the third act of the movie, you're not going to like it. Because I have to say the first two acts, there's a lot of like building of things. The pacing is maybe a little bit slower than it should be, in my opinion. And it's a little bit of a slog to get through the movie until you get to the third act. If you don't like the third act, you're not going to like this movie. Because it really does fall upon the third act to redeem the movie. And for some people, it did. For me, it did. Some people, it didn't. And I'm going to be honest with you. I am a Gen X. I went to see the original Ghostbusters in the theaters.
Right.
So this thing is geared to me. There's a lot of callbacks. There's definitely a lot of nostalgia in there, and I can't help it. I love me some nostalgia. So for me, it's like even the first two acts, like I said, the pacing was a little bit off, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. I still enjoyed a lot of the nostalgia. I like the trip that they were taking, so it didn't bother me as much. But the third act is going to determine it for you. And they did set up that they're going to try to do more movies.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how I feel about that.
I do feel like after this movie, we've touched on everything. I don't know if there's anything more to say about this particular universe.
Huh.
And I could be wrong.
Okay.
Maybe they'll come up with a really interesting story. They are going to have to change, I feel, the structure of these movies because you've got the old crew and you've got the new crew. And I feel like if you're going to continue to make these movies, you do need to get away from the nostalgia side of things and gear more to the new people. Although Ray Stantz is amazing in this film, and I think they need to, as long as Dan Aykroyd's willing to keep making these movies, I feel like him and Egon's granddaughter, the two of them, when they are on screen together, it's magic.
Aw, McKenna Grace.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. They work so well together. I love seeing the two of them on screen. You got the old school and the new school working together to solve whatever problem they're trying to figure out. And they have a great chemistry together. And I'd love to see more of that. But it's going to really depend upon, I would say, story. But Hollywood right now and the box office is a little weird because Dune 2 was doing really well until Ghostbusters shows up and then they get knocked out of their spot. Didn't take long to do that. And I have the feeling that when we get Godzilla Kong, it's going to knock Ghostbusters out of their spot.
Right.
People are getting really fickle, I think. But at the same time, I don't know how important it is. To the studios, I'm sure it's extremely important to be the number one movie.
Right.
But you're going to have all three of them in theaters, so you can watch whatever you want to watch. It doesn't matter who's on the top spot, just as long as it's available and you can go see it. But it does seem as if people are flitting from one movie to another. It's not like you have a movie that's completely dominating the box office and these
That
other
people
movies.
will go and rewatch.
And they'll rewatch and rewatch.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're ready for the next thing. And you don't have this big movie that's going to be weeks and weeks of being the number one movie. And you have all these other movies playing King of the Hill, trying to grab the crown and maybe not quite hitting the mark. It's not that situation now. It's, oh, okay, we've seen this movie. Let's go to the next one. Let's go to the next one. And that may be what our summer looks like. We're getting into that summer season, and now genre movies are becoming a little more regular. And we're still trying to get caught up on the strike and trying to get stuff out there. It's not as if there's a lot of movies that are coming out that you want to go see. It's going to be more of a trickle to begin with. And so people now are hopping from movie to movie. So whatever the brand new thing is this week, I think it's going to be the movie that people are going to go see. But eventually we'll get caught back up and we may see what happens at that point. But by the time that happens, we may be living in a different world because, and I was wondering if I wanted to talk about this because I like talking about watching movies and TV shows. That's what you like to talk about.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, let's step back just a second before we dive into that, because I know you've been watching X-Men 97, like I've been watching X-Men 97. And yeah, I'm chickening out just a little bit, but let's take a break before we dive into this. But we got our third episode.
Yeah.
And I could pat myself on the back and go, oh, I knew this was coming. But if you read the comics, you knew what they were going to do when you saw the second Jean Grey. You probably hadn't read Inferno at all.
No.
You hadn't seen that comic arc in X-Men. Of course, I remember it. And we did get our Goblin Queen. And we got like a television version of what happened in Inferno. It was compressed, truncated a little bit.
Yeah, it did feel like there was so much going on. Like this one episode could have been split into an entire season. Like everything that was happening, and if we had the slow build to learn that we were living with a clone, if we had a little bit more time figuring out who wants the baby, I still loved it. I absolutely loved it. And we still got all this extra story that we know is coming and is going to build, which what in my mind, I'm foreseeing is from the Age of Apocalypse arc, which was only 4 issues in Generation X, Uncanny X-Men,
Right.
X-Force. They each had their own 4-issue arc.
And I'm trying to remember in the X-Men TV show, Apocalypse, I think it was a 2-parter, I believe.
Yeah, it
I'm
was
trying-
just, they acted like it was the future, not like an alternative universe.
Right.
This is just what our future looks like, not this is what would have happened if Charles had died. Now we have that in this cartoon universe, so we can really see that and see what can happen and what's going to happen. So I'm interested to see that. But yeah, I did love this episode. I feel like maybe they're afraid that they're going to get canceled, so they're trying to rush it, because this could have been a whole series on its own. It was a great storytelling, great reveals, great. Oh my gosh, the animation. Should we talk about the horror movie?
the body horror.
Yes, like The Thing and all the trauma. Morph was a character that was created in the TV show,
Yeah.
and everyone loved him, so they put him in the comic books. So we're getting what Morph deserves in this, and his trauma with Mr. Sinister.
Oh, yeah.
I enjoyed it. I am absolutely geek color glasses, loving this
Oh,
series.
Yeah, I really did enjoy it. And of course, if you know the comics, you realize that we have seen basically the origin story for a very popular X character, Cable.
Uh-huh.
So now we
Yep.
know how Cable wound up in the future. And that was something that they hadn't really covered too much in the comics.
Really?
And so we get, because there's this idea, it's like, why would Scott Summers allow his son to be brought into the future? And they answered it in a really good way. So it makes sense that he would be torn about it. He wouldn't want to do it, but he didn't have a choice. And so he's forced to do it.
Yeah.
Again, chickening out just a little bit, but also talking about scary. Yesterday, Sony out of the blue dropped a mini episode, a mini movie, The Spider Inside, just a little taste of the Spider-Verse once again, because the next Spider-Man animated is being delayed.
Right.
So we get a little bit of taste of that, and it was like a little snippet.
Yeah, it was scary.
But if you're not familiar with the Spider-Verse or hadn't seen any of the animations, it's a really good dive into what that style looks like, and also the characterizations, because even for being just like a short film, it was very well put together. You had great relationship building between a father and a son, and of course a son who can't tell his father what he's doing. Of course, his father, if you've seen any of the Spider-Verse movies, he's a police officer. You also know that he had his issues with Spider-Man.
Of course.
When he got the mask off, he has his relationship with his father as shaky as it's been. But when he puts the mask on, suddenly you had those issues, because you have the law, who's not really fond of vigilantes ever. And so it's a great little snippet. It's a great little taste of the Spider-Verse movies, since we're going to have to wait a little while longer for the other one. So, okay, let me grab my paper.
Yeah, hold it real close to the microphone so all the listeners can see it.
Yeah, exactly. I did write a lot of this stuff down because I didn't want to misquote anybody. And there are some moving parts to this, but Disney is in the middle of some stuff.
Ooh.
Basically, Disney is in the middle of a hostile takeover.
Okay. All right. A coup?
In a manner of speaking, our main player in this coup is named Nelson Peltz. He refers to himself as an activist investor. He is a co-owner of Trian Partners and Investment Group. What they do is they look for companies that they feel are valuable but undervalued. In other words, there's some potential there for them to become more profitable. And so they go in, they buy a bunch of shares, influencing the companies, steering them into being more profitable, more efficient. They own some of PepsiCo, Wendy's, and Taco Bell. They also are parts owners of the Heinz brand, and they're a multi-billion-dollar company. And they have gotten shares of Disney.
Huh.
And this is now turned into a proxy fight, which means what Peltz wants to do is he wants to get a couple of seats on the board, one for himself and one for Jay Roslow, who is also a co-owner of Trian, who used to work for Disney as the chief financial officer. So basically what they're planning on doing is they're trying to get a couple of seats. Now, there's another investment group that's involved in Disney who's looking to get 3 seats. So there's only like 15 seats total. So with these 5 seats, it's going to allow them the ability to steer the ship.
Get a quorum.
Yeah,
Votes.
exactly. That's what they're trying to do. Now, they've gone so far, and you can go online, and there's a website that Trian put up called restorethemagic.com, which is a website explaining what they want to do with Disney.
A mission statement.
A mission statement. So they want to make Disney more profitable. They want to make it more attractive for the shareholders. Because this is not about what the audience wants or the product or anything about that. This is a straight up shareholders thing. How can we make Disney more profitable for the shareholders, of which they are shareholders? Now, part of the reason why Trian is a big shareholder, because they have $3.5 billion worth of Disney stock. They're a huge shareholder of Disney. Now, here's the twist. 79% of shares came from Ike Perlmutter. Now, this is a name you might remember because this was the guy who was the chairman and CEO of Marvel Entertainment. He used to be Kevin Feige's boss. You may
Okay.
This was the guy that was doing a lot of the TV show stuff. When Kevin Feige was doing the movie stuff, he was the guy that was counting cans of soda that were being used on set and keeping track of all of that stuff. And he was the guy that gave us the Inhumans. Hurrah.
Oh.
He got fired because Kevin Feige was like, look, I know he's my boss, but what he wants to do and what I want to do is completely different. And so you're going to have to decide which one of us you want to have in charge. And Bob Iger, he looked at it and he's like, well, who's making us a lot of money? It's Kevin Feige, so sorry, Ike, you're out of here. And, of course, he wasn't happy about that at all.
Yeah.
And
2 ex-Disney employees are going to end up on the board with voter sway.
possibly.
Huh.
This has turned into a complete war.
Yeah. It's
Because
it's
it's a-
not easy to understand.
You have other people who have stock, like George Lucas. Of course, stock options were part of what he got when he sold Lucasfilm. And his feeling on it, of course, is that if these bozos wind up taking over and it all just becomes about the bottom line, artistry just goes out the window.
Walt Disney, it's one of his big old quotes is
Yeah.
we don't make movies to make money. We make money to make movies.
Yeah. Now, you're probably asking yourself, could this get any worse?
I wasn't, but
Yeah. So Nelson Peltz, this 80-year-old guy, and to be fair, he's good at what he does. He does go into companies and make them more efficient and they make more money. But, marketing ketchup and hamburgers is different than marketing movies.
Yeah.
Okay? You can definitely tell that both he and Ike Perlmutter are of the same mind, which is how can we spend the least amount of money and make the most amount of profit off of it? And a lot of their philosophy on this is a little bit messed up. So basically, Nelson Peltz just recently did an interview with the Financial Times, and he talked about a lot of the stuff as far as Marvel's concerned. And one of the things that he said was, I'm not sure about Kevin Feige. I'm not sure if he really has the credentials. Because in the interview they asked, he said, you've never really dealt with a movie company. What do you know about making movies? And he just basically said, I don't know a lot about making movies, but I kind of question if Kevin Feige knows a lot either. So he said, I'm not looking to fire Kevin Feige, but it ain't off the table. And I'm thinking, of course, I'm pretty sure they want to fire him because Ike Perlmutter, who's, one of the people behind the scenes, definitely wants to see Kevin Feige get fired. Absolutely he does. And so I'm sure they're gearing up to do that.
I guess DC will get Feige and James Gunn.
That really depends on how the vote goes. Now, you may be thinking, how could this possibly get worse?
I wasn't thinking that.
So this is what else he said, and I wrote it down because I don't want to misquote this at all. This is exactly what he said, according to the article in Financial Times during the interview. Quote, "People go to watch a movie or a show to be entertained. They don't go to get a message. Why do we have to have a Marvel that's all women?" Yes, he said that in the article, which at that point you're like, not that there's anything wrong with women, which is like, that's what everybody says right at the end, when they say something like that. So anyway, let me go back to reading. Not that I have anything against women. Oh, Jesus Christ. Not that I have anything against women, but why do I have to do that? Why can't I have Marvels that are both? So it's like he was complaining that the Marvels and Captain Marvel had female leads.
But this is all in the same quote, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is all in the same quote.
Later on in the interview, doubling down on this, he says, why do I need an all-black cast? Okay, first of all, what movie had an all-black cast?
None.
But you know what he's talking about. And again, it goes back to Ike Perlmutter, because one of the big fights that he got with Kevin Feige was Black Panther and Captain Marvel. Perlmutter didn't want those films made because, and we talked about this before on the show, because women and people of color leading movies aren't profitable. They're a financial risk. Really? Really they are? Now, the Marvels didn't do nearly as well as anyone thought it was going to do, but Captain Marvel made really good money. And of course, the Black Panther movies made over $1 billion and Oscar nominations.
Yes.
And Oscar wins. First Marvel movie to get a nomination for Best Picture.
Yes.
It's this mindset. Okay, well, if we want to make the most amount of money with the least amount of spending, these old guys think, well, we know people will come to see movies that have white male leads in them. If it's not a white male lead, you're taking a bit of a risk, which you're not, but they think that you are. And so they figure, what's the point of it? Why don't we just make movies with white male leads that we know everyone's going to go see? It's the least amount of risk. And
well,
so,
should we bring up the last Ant-Man or the last Doctor Strange?
Oh, you think?
I'm sure there are others that not off the top of my head, but those didn't do well either. And Black Widow was different because of that dual release thing. It could have made more. We don't know. But that's a female lead, and it could have done well.
Yeah, but this is what these old guys have been talking about.
Can't they take a page from Barbie? Didn't they see that?
Well, apparently, like I said, it's just like nobody's really paying attention.
And I think the Marvels probably would have done well. Oh, it was during the Hot Ones interview. It was Matt Damon talking about how in the 90s you had two releases.
Right.
You had the theatrical release, then you got word of mouth out, then people rented it and bought the movie. I think word of mouth would have got out with the Marvels, and they would have had a better release on video. Once word of mouth got out and people talked about how good it was. Lost that.
Yeah.
But that's
The other part of it, too, is that I haven't seen the Marvels on Disney+. I have been told it's not the theatrical release.
Oh, really?
They tweaked a few things.
Okay.
And from what I understand, people who have seen the Marvels on Disney Plus are like, I don't see what the problem is.
Right, yeah.
So maybe there were some issues in the theatrical release, which I saw, that they were like, if we're going to release it on Disney Plus, let's tweak a few things. We know that there were some things that didn't quite hit. Maybe we made some cuts we shouldn't have, and they made some adjustments, and apparently the version that you get on Disney Plus is better.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was really excited through the whole thing. And
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I love the mid-credit scene. Oh, that made me so happy.
Oh, yeah. So perhaps, I'd revisit it on Disney Plus, see if I can figure out to see maybe that maybe they made some fixes. But now we are in a situation where you have these hedge fund bozos who own a bunch of Disney stock who are ready to do a hostile takeover. And it's really going to fall into what the rest of the stockholders do. Some of the stockholders are leaning toward these guys. They're leaning toward Trian because they're not interested in what people think about the movies. It's like, How do I get the biggest dividend on my investment? And they can make an argument that old Nelson here, Nelson Putz, sorry, mispronounced that, but that he's the best person. If that's all you care about is how can we squeeze Disney for every dividend that we can get out of it, yeah, that kind of tracks. But then you have other people who are more into the artistic side, who want to see good movies and television shows, and this is not the route they want to see happen. Now, how this all splits, we don't know. But it's all going to depend on what happens with the vote.
We know when that happens.
April the 4th.
Okay.
So next week. By next week, we're going to know how this sits. We will have the answer. We will know who's going to be steering the course of Disney, what it's going to look like from this point on, and does Bob Iger stay or not?
Wow.
Because the board could get rid of him.
Yeah.
But as of right now, like I said, this has turned into a battle to the point that both sides are putting up advertising. And you're seeing the advertising on Disney Plus about this.
This is going to make a great movie in 30 years.
Yeah, if Disney's around to make it. But I guess we'll see.
We shall see.
And with that said, we come to the end of episode 214. Thank you for listening, and tune in next time for the latest in geek news and views with the Geek Watch podcast. For Mandy Petrie, this is Brian Hatcher, reminding all the Geek Watchers, we're all geeky about something. Be proud of yours. See you next time. Thank you for listening to the Geek Watch podcast. If you enjoyed this program, don't forget to like and subscribe on your preferred platform and share this podcast on your social media. For links to all the ways you can listen to the Geek Watch podcast, as well as leave comments and suggestions, visit our website at geekwatch.net. The Geek Watch podcast is a Hanging J production.